batteries, love batteries. They're expensive. Elon Musk would even tell you that. I mean, one reason why he's proposing a billion-plus cell factory is to try and get the marginal cost of the batteries down. Since he also talked about 6 states, including Texas, about where to site the factory, I think Elon Musk is looking for some tax incentive support to make sure that factory is as economical as possible. But notwithstanding, you really need to get the cost of batteries down substantially to have this. I mean, it is the holy grail to have a large deployable source of storage to do all sorts of arbitrage on the grid and the like. But you really, and I'm giving you an AEP technology assessment here, so you may or may not agree with it, but you're really going to have some breakthroughs in terms of either manufacturing cost, or we're keeping our eye out very much on some flow batteries that may help in both improving capacity of the batteries and lowering their production costs. But you know, that again is part of this issue is what could be versus what is, and that's stuff that, as a matter of fact, we'll talk about in Columbus, because another benefit we get from being an investor in this venture cap fund is that we're going to have a tech day in Columbus. This will be the second one. We had one last year, and we'll get the CEOs of these interesting technology companies coming in, including some folks that are now doing flow cell batteries out of MIT who were behind A123 batteries. And so, you know, these are some credible folks, and we'll get some insight into what's going on out there in battery space. Another one that we spent some time talking about, and again gets described in this grid of the future, is combined heat and power. Got a little engine that produces electricity. Waste heat from the engine is used for building heat and, I suppose, cooling, depending on how much money you want to spend on capital investment. We actually ran the numbers on this. I won't get into all the details or protect the innocent who we were working with, but we were looking very much at, could you deploy a Stirling engine, it's a heat engine, and offer a product to our customers that offered both the ability to have some grid security, had backup power, plus the ability to heat and cool. Couldn't make the numbers work, at least in our service territory. A lot of it had to do with the ultimate reliability of the machine and how often you would have to touch it and maintain it. Those are all practical, real-world realities about deploying new technology. But also, ironically, and this cuts both ways in combined heat and power, the little Stirling engine was not particularly efficient at producing electricity, which was kind of bad from the cost of electricity standpoint, but man, did it produce a lot of heat. And so it rejected a lot of heat, and in fact, so much heat that you kind of weren't going to be able to just heat. You might like boil a pool if you were going to use it as in pool cooling. So it really started to look at, you needed to be a hospital or a restaurant or a car wash or something that needed a large amount of hot water to make practical sense. But anyways, combine heat and power. And on the other hand, by the way, if you are more efficient at producing electricity, you reject less heat, and therefore you're less, the numbers will look worse from a heating and cooling standpoint in terms of what you have available. So that gives you a little bit of rundown of the kind of stuff we look at. And now here's the one that you're all going to, at least somebody's going to throw a roll at me or something. And so Bob, so what is AEP's perspective on this group of technologies and others about its ability to replace the grid? It ain't going to happen anytime soon, is my report to you. Okay, and it's not going to happen because of scope and scale issues that I'll get into in a minute with particular examples. Now, regarding the second question I teed up, are these technologies ready for prime time enough that they are going to cause all sorts of mischief out there in terms of positive mischief, customer choices, new technologies, green, really challenging the regulatory paradigms out there in all 50 states, whether they're regulated and unregulated? You bet. You bet. And in particular, solar and energy efficiency are the two that right now I think are ready for prime time to be the key manifestation of that mischief that's going to be happening out there, good, bad, and in between. And by the way, I don't think that this is going to be a big bang theory where all of a sudden it's, solar and energy efficiency has crushed the grid or made substantial policy changes in the grid or whatnot. It's going to happen, and it's going to follow things like solar intensity. By the way, it's factor of 2 difference across the United States on what solar intensity is, directly corresponding to the cost of solar. It's going to follow incentives. It's going to follow public policy. It's going to follow the rate structure in this United States. I caught about 45 minutes of the discussion this morning. Hard for some Californians, although I admit the panel was pretty sober about this, and I spent 17 years out in California, so I understand a little bit anyways, but all 50 states, all the other 49 states are not like California. So the other 49 states do not have a tiered rate system in which the last tier of the rate system is very encouraging to go do all sorts of different and interesting things. So in our service territory, the deployment of some of these technologies, let's take solar as an example, has very much followed incentives. And right now, the state that has the biggest incentive for solar is Louisiana. And although Louisiana has a cap, it has I want to move to Louisiana because I'd like to put solar on my house. But it's an incredible state tax credit when combined with the federal incentives just makes solar look very attractive. And I mean, that bucket's being filled up, very, very quickly. So there's an example of how, things might not deploy in a big bang. And let me give you another specific example regarding solar that, Claire, you were involved at least in part in some of these discussions. So you asked Claire all the hard questions about what was going on here. But so we tried to take a decade look, and this really was, if you think this was a defensive kind of analysis to say, how do we go into our bunker and make this all go away? No, this was an offensive analysis to say, should we invest precious capital, in which we have other choices to invest capital? Should we invest in rooftop solar or utility scale solar, you name it, and or should we do something? What's the threat? What's the opportunity? What's the risk, balance, reward, all that kind of stuff. So here's the kind of stuff that we discovered as we took a look at the analysis. Across the AEP system that I described, 11 states, we have lower than average electric rates. Okay? We have about an average of half the solar intensity across the AEP. It's really cloudy in Columbus. Oh God, it's so right there. You've got a cost pressure in the opposite direction than you do from Southern California or Arizona or even West Texas as an example. With the exception of Louisiana, there are no substantial state incentives for solar, so you're depending on the federal incentives and the like. As we looked at our forecasted forward curves for solar, which are decreasing, we think that the installers are going to figure out how to get installation costs down and customer acquisition costs, and panel costs will continue to be on a generally downward trajectory, and our rates are going up. Okay, our rates are going up because of investments mandated out of Washington for the traditional utility. Go put a scrubber on a power plant, go do post-Fukushima modifications to your plant, your nuclear plant. So the analysis was not done with our rates are going to be really low and solar is going to be really expensive. We took an engineering analysis with outside help to say, okay, of all of our customers, how many of their homes or businesses are capable of taking solar panels, both from an engineering constructability standpoint, but also some reasonable look at, let's not put them on the north side of a roof in Ohio. Does the customer own their house? Is it constructible? Does it make some economic sense to put a solar panel on with these forecasted circumstances? And believe it or not, that kind of pairs the amount of our customers that over the next decade would deploy solar to something more like the 25 or 30% range. Okay. Now something else we run a retail electric business where we're providing contracts to customers and in our non-regulated business. Creditworthiness of your customers is something that you also worry about very much, and a solar company worries about, even with these nice leases that are happening with Wall Street money and the like. Solar companies are worried about the creditworthiness of customers as well. And when you put another lens on creditworthiness of customers, you come to the conclusion that yes, solar is disruptive. Yes, solar will take away load from your utility, but at the end of the day, it's in the 5 or 10% of your customers over the next decade. And that's the context in which you make an investment decision about whether you go into rooftop solar or not a perspective that says 100% of my customers are going to install solar over the next 10 years.